Hello, and welcome to At Your End Step. My name is Morgan, and I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
And we have that fun-filled episode for you folks this week, 3 times in a row. Don't call it a comeback. But we have a few community topics to discuss, as well as some GPs that happened over the weekend, as well as an open. So, a pretty well-rounded episode. Let's just jump right in. So, to kick off the community segment, we have MTGO getting some negative press, shockingly, to everyone's surprise. People kind of dunking on MTGO, and not for the reasons you may typically think, but
Well, yeah, it's dunking as like more in support of MTGO, which it feels weird to be in this universe.
it's true. So you may have seen an article in Channel Fireball about the how Magic Arena is eating MTGO's numbers. Or destroying MTGO, and that caused a lot of panic. But we have some more positive articles about Magic Online.
I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. Well, we said like some changes made with it. I want to mention like some of this article a little bit. Did you read it by chance?
No, I haven't read. We're talking about Florian
Koch's article
Koch's,
on Channel Fireball. Yeah. So the way that he described this, he used something that I had not known. So there's a website called Pure MTGO. Which, if I remember correctly, Josh Claytor is actually the editor of. He's also edits LegMTG, so he's always good to me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But there's a web series. There's a series on that website that is like state of the system, state of the program, whatever.
Right.
And there's a number always given at the end. So Pure MTGO is linked to MTGO Traders, which is a major bot system on Magic Online. And the number apparently at the end of these articles represented the total amount it would cost for you to buy 4 copies of every card, assuming you're buying the cheapest copy of said card, right, in Magic Online. And in the last 2 years since 2016, that number has literally dropped in half, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't only because of Arena. Arena is a definite part of it, and if you look at there's some graphing that
it's like a timeline
that Koch shows. You can look at where the 2 major dropping points are. It's the dropping point is treasure chests, and then you can look at when the Arena closed beta happened and then the open beta happened, and you see the drops, which I think is fairly interesting. I know that like Chase Andres has written about how the modern index has gone down a lot on Magic Online with the opening of Arena. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit because it seems kind of interesting. I know, Morgan, you have definitely said multiple times on this show that eventually like Magic Online will have to cease to be like just like the way if Arena is popular and takes off, then there just really isn't.
right.
Now that's even Koch says that's still a long way off.
For sure. I would completely agree with it. It's not going to be soon at all. Arena obviously still in beta. It's an open beta, but still in beta. It still has a lot of things to work out as far as that's concerned. But it is, as far as something that is more appealing to people, Arena is more appealing to people. And you can try and fix that with Magic Online, but why? Like, why? Like, what? Where's the incentive for Wizards to do that when they already have a product built that is what the people want? At least, like the people that they're aiming to attract to it.
right.
But it's still a long way off.
But what I think is interesting is something that this article highlights that I did not even know. It talks about how there were some pieces of language in the end user agreement for Magic Online that used to be in there that no longer exists.
Really?
So there used to be some language that talked about how often they would reprint something. So much like the reserve list to trying to give, and that I guess disappeared a few years ago, and then treasure chests happened. And he talks about how treasure chests they're pretty bad for the economy. He said like he mentioned a couple other times that like spikes have happened in Magic Online, like he said with play points. The index dropped like 20%, but it rebounded quickly because people just didn't understand that play points were good for them.
Yeah.
But treasure chests were the opposite, and people were excited to have prizes pay out a little bit differently. But like I still play a fair amount of Magic Online, and I used to be the kind of person who enjoyed opening treasure chests. Now I just sell all of them because one, the current batch of treasure chests that have Battle Bond in them are awful. No one wants any Battle Bond cards for any reason on Magic Online. But more than that, the cards just aren't worth as much. Like your chance of opening something that is worth selling more than the 2 tickets that your chest is worth is heavily reduced. So now that's going to change a little bit because Ultimate Masters is being brought into the chests this month. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's what today we're recording on Wednesday the
Right.
5th. So today's update for Magic Online was supposed to introduce that. There was a bug that they didn't get it, but I think it's fixed by now by the time we're recording. So hopefully it's fixed.
But I thought it was interesting. So they took that out of the Institute of Treasure Chest. The other thing is there used to be a language in the end user agreement that said that there'd be an announcement of at least 2 years before Magic Online closed. So like they had to like notify you because again people have real money tied into this. You know, tickets are ostensibly $1. So that's been the major point of Magic Online. They took that language out too at some point. So I find that kind of interesting that these safeguards, Wizards has sort of shifted away from, and so I thought it was kind of interesting. I know a lot of people there's been some pretty loud discussion about this article, and I think like Coke does a good job at the end of saying like, hey, I'm not saying this is happening now. And some people even said like the price index on Magic Online isn't something that maybe you should that number that we're referring to that's dropped in half. Maybe you shouldn't be so worried about that. There's things that are included like less standard play. There's things included like things that if you look at things like Vintage, when they put Vintage on there, those cards just by the availability of them have dropped like literally a huge amount.
Yeah.
So you just have things like that. But he said as a person who like has essentially as close as you can have to the index that Magic, that Pure MTGO is talking about. He said he's lost equivalent of like $200 a month steadily for the last 2 years if you were like to cash out, so to speak.
Yeah.
So now, of course, there's some shadiness there. Technically, cashing out doesn't mean anything in Magic Online. People sell their tickets, but is that on the level based on the user agreement? Nah, But of course, there is a way to cash out, and that is through redemption. Mm-hmm. So, and obviously, there's things that Arena just has not got solved yet. You're not drafting with people on Arena. Of course, we have no idea what Eternal or larger formats could even look like if they'll ever be on Arena. Currently, you have no like path to the Pro Tour or any sort of like major constructed thing on Arena. So again, there's a lot of hurdles to climb. But from just a numbers perspective, that graph doesn't lie. Like there are major dips when the different parts of Arena show up, and Arena's been successful. So I think something that a lot of people had in the back of their minds got sort of thrust to the front of it.
Yeah, because people were definitely tumbling. Like I saw a tweet where like Allied fetches or cons fetches dropped like 25% after this article like hit the market. So it's just like Magic Online can it be in a lot of ways similar to like a stock market, and it's far more volatile, but it's volatile.
Well, here's the thing though, his article suggests it hasn't been. That's the crazy thing. Like it hasn't been volatile. Like even when there's been big problems, those drops have come right back. This is the first time it's been extended. So,
Gotcha.
So I would argue it's actually not been volatile, and that's why this is alarming. So
well, I think that a lot of people probably just see the writing on the wall. I'm plugging my laptop. I'll be right back. I'm going to finish that point.
I don't know what this writing is. Maybe it just says like I don't know.
They see the writing on the wall and they see like they see the force and push behind Arena, and I don't know. I don't know when Magic Online came out. They couldn't have possibly had anything like that towards the program because we don't have the infrastructure of streaming, and I think streaming is hugely important. So they're putting all this marketing push behind Arena, and people can just see that and see how much like they are trying to get people into Arena, and it's just going to dwarf any sort of player base that Magic Online has, and then they can slowly, start shutting off things in Magic Online and really like. If you aren't already getting like the message, like they do definitely want to have Magic Online and Arena coexist for some time, but I can't imagine that being forever.
No, and by the very nature that they have to, because again, you can't. They don't have the infrastructure yet to do the things that they want whatever their digital platform is, they want it to be able to do. And while it's Arena is nice because it's simplicity, there is a depth to it that doesn't exist yet because you don't have older formats, and again, like you're playing against bots and half the things you do. So it makes total sense they want them to exist at the same time for now. But yeah, I agree with you. Writing's on the wall, and that makes me sad because like I still do not like Arena very much, and I really have I would say I've grown accustomed to Magic Online, but I can play Modern on Magic Online, and That's all I've been doing now for the last since GP Milwaukee is just Modern. I can't go do that. I can't go test Modern on Arena. So
I think it'll be interesting to see how the future of competitive Magic is influenced by Arena, and we kind of have a topic that we'll talk about later on here.
I mean, I just put that there in the end. Do you want to chain into that because it makes kind of sense to talk about it here?
Yeah, for sure. The last thing I want to say is that chat is now opt-in in Magic Online, which is a great change. You will still get notifications when people message you, but you won't immediately you won't see it. You have to actually click on the chat button to see chat. So good change. Good on you, Wizards, because chat is sometimes awful in Magic Online. In case you weren't aware. But yeah, so the next thing we want to talk about is there is going to be a big announcement. It's going to be leaning towards competitive play, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
And it's going to be happening December 6th. Now, this announcement is just a little different. It's not like an article that's going to go up at 11 a.m. Eastern time. It is going to be announced at a stage. Basically, there's this thing called the Game Awards, which is the Video Game Awards. Game Awards, which is a sort of like the wannabe Oscars for video games. I hate to say it like that.
No one wants to be the Oscars, just so you know. The Oscars sucks.
All right, fair enough. It is the quote unquote big award show for video games. And they have an announcement that's going to be happening on this stage. An article is going to follow along with this, but they are really, trying to have a big presence for this announcement for what we assume is going to be centered around Magic Arena, because you're having this announcement at the Game Awards, which says something. So a lot of people have been speculating on what this could be, since it's centered around Arena, and Arena just recently announced that they're going to be fixing their ranking system. So it actually will right now it really doesn't matter. But they're actually going to be implementing true rankings. So this can go hand in hand with maybe a push towards a competitive series on Arena of some persuasion, or a new format for Arena specifically. And people have kind of been wanting something like that for a long time, because this would assist in fixing the rotation issue that they have currently on Arena. But I do think this is going to be a big announcement. I do think it's going to be significant. If it wasn't, why would you go through all these hoops?
Yeah, I don't know
not
why,
to be.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. Wizards is very capable of going through all these hoops and still bringing the disappointment. So I won't be shocked if it's nothing.
I don't know. They normally don't take those kind of announcements out of the house, though. You know what I mean?
I agree, but we have thought Wizards was incapable of doing so many things, and they have proved us wrong so many times.
It's so weird because when you say prove us wrong, there's been so many times where it's been really good. We're like, oh, I'm surprised, and so many times too where it's like, what? Who? Anybody could have told you not to do that. Any single person could have told you not to do that.
But that's going to be tomorrow.
Side note.
Yeah.
Game of the Year. Game Awards.
Yeah.
Who you got? We've got Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Celeste, God of War, Marvel's Spider-Man, Monster Hunter World, Red Dead Redemption 2.
So I haven't played Celeste. I do know it's a good game, but I haven't played it. I haven't played, what was it?
Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
I haven't played Odyssey.
God of War.
I haven't played God of War.
Wow.
I played Spider-Man. I really, really, really enjoyed Spider-Man, but I don't think it's Game of the Year.
You played Monster Hunter a fair amount too, right?
I did. I don't think Monster Hunter is Game of the Year either, but it looks real good and it's a lot of fun. So I really did enjoy that and those two games a whole bunch. It's hard to vote against Red Dead Redemption 2. It's such a I haven't played it. I literally own a copy of it. It's sitting on the pool table along with a bunch of other crap that I need to get rid of. But I know it's a game that requires a large amount of time to be invested in it, and I don't have that time, or I would genuinely rather be playing Resident Evil 2 on the PlayStation 1 because I really want the remake for Resident Evil 2, and it's not January 25th yet.
So you're going Red Dead?
I think that's the easy choice to make.
All right.
I think if Spider-Man 2 was just a little bit better,
Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, excuse me. I believe if Spider-Man was just like a little bit better and got a little bit of a higher rating all around, I think it would truly give Red Dead Redemption 2 a run for its money. But I don't know. I don't think you can really be a smart person and bet
No,
against
I wouldn't bet
Redemption 2.
against it either. I will say, as a person who 100% of Spider-Man, I would agree the combat system is not deep enough for me to call it like number one. But I'm going with Celeste on this. If you haven't played Celeste, I know it's
a good speed game. As far as like speed running is concerned, I know people love speed running that game.
It is one of the coolest stories I've ever seen attached to a platforming game because this person's trying to climb a mountain and like essentially a negative version of yourself, like your anxiety comes to like attack you while you're working on these things, and you've literally got to climb this mountain to overcome it. And it is such a neat metaphor. The game is beautiful. The soundtrack's great. I play it and listen to it all the time. We go with Celeste,
right.
indie darling.
I think Celeste is a good like dark horse candidate, and I like God of War as another dark horse candidate.
A good reinvention of
that could sneak it away. Another game that I own but don't have the time to play. That could sneak away a win, because I think that while some of there's been a lot of like positive press for Red Dead Redemption 2, I think because the way that the game of the year, there are ballots that are sent out to industry people that do fill them out. So I do feel like the sentiment among people talking about that game has been interesting as time has gone on, because it is a very meticulous game, and sometimes people, the longer that goes on, it's just like, I want this to not be this way. So that could influence people's decisions on what they want to vote for. So but I think that's a good list for Game of the Year as far as everything that's come out. I think Odyssey is the weird one on there. I've heard like a lot of mixed things about Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
I've actually want to try it. I haven't played a lot of Assassin's Creed games, but the aesthetic of Odyssey does
speak to you.
Does speak to me. So I'll probably play it when
See,
it goes on sale.
I have Origins that I need to dive into, and that's all in
like
Egypt.
From a tall building dive.
Yeah, well, into some hay, and that's how you never die from those dives.
Yeah.
But I think that's a solid list. It's disappointing not to really see like a good like RPG on there. I guess Odyssey has some RPG elements, but
yeah, the list for our RPGs included like Octopath Traveler and like Ni no Kuni 2 and things like that. But anyways, I guess we're a Magic podcast. I just wanted to do that like quick aside because I saw the list and I was like, all right, we can do it. If you just fell asleep going, oh, play video games, I only play Arena, I've got some hypocrisy to sell you. But we should probably move on.
Yeah. So the next thing we're going to talk about is for Magic Fests for next year. Constructed GPs will now function like limited ones. So cut after the 8th round, but then you will play the 9th, all the same day.
Yes.
Okay.
So so I played in Milwaukee and I lost in the 8th round, which was sad. But the friends of mine who won that round, the cut would then happen then, and then those people would play round 9. So the nice thing too is it lets people make, because a lot of people in the morning they come in, just having a person I traveled with, and lost round 1 of day 2 immediately and dropped and played the PTQ. So this gives you a little more information on what you might want to do day 2, and it lets day 2 end a little bit earlier. I know we were driving back from Milwaukee, and if you top 8'd, that's a long day. So it's only an hour difference, but it does make a lot of difference for some people. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's not too bad. So
that's a weird way of being like, hey, I day 2'd, but I only played on Saturday.
Right. You could just lose, you could just go 6-2 and then be 6-3 and be like, we have PTQ time. So that's really funny.
Hilarious. The next thing that happened involving Magic Fest is we know what promo you're going to be getting when you sign up for the main event or do any of the side events that also give out these promos. It's going to be a full art promo lightning bolt, and it is sharp.
Oh, it is. It is nice. I've been going back and forth and buying one of the Texas Lightning Bolts for Battle Box. Don't have to.
Don't even have to worry about it.
Do not need to look at it.
I think this is a cool thing. I think a lot of people didn't expect full art promos to ever really come back because it's not something that is conducive to new players really, and it's nice to see that they took a chance and through players a bone. I really think this card is going to hold a decent amount of value still. It is like a common, which is kind of funny, but it's so unique. When you look at like the player rewards promo bolts, they're fairly expensive. Anything
like 60 plus.
Yeah, anything that is so unique like this it is going to gain value over time. There's going to be a lot of them that are, obviously given out over the next year, but I would say that get a playset of them and get a foil playset of them, and maybe a non-foil, because these are also going to be available in non-foil. Get 8 of them. Four of each, and then you'll be set for lightning bolts.
Yeah, let's see here. Lightning Bolt was printed all the way from Alpha through 5th edition, and then again in what was it? 2 core sets or just one? Was it M?
It's M10 and M11, I think.
Okay, 2 core sets, and then almost every master set, and that card is still $5. So
Popular.
I think like the promo will do just fine.
Sure.
There is still no word on whether or not the artist who drew the Lightning Bolt will be attending the Magic Fest though, because bazinga.
So the last thing that we actually want to talk about is there was a blog post that has kind of made its rounds a little bit and got a lot of people in the community talking about it. It was written by A.D. Jameson, and it's titled "An Open Letter to Cedric Phillips, Jerry Thompson, and the Pro Magic Community at Large." And it's fairly long. It's a good read. It's worth your time. But the gist of the article, it starts out talking about how back in the earlier days of Magic, Magic was focused on the pro players. That he talks about, or they talk about how they had pro player cards. In the actual booster packs, they had Magic Invitational. They had all these things that were really focused on the pro players. The idea that this idea of Mage Punk, this sort of aggressive, in your face way of Magic being like styled as a general idea. He even mentions the fact that 2 blocks or sets
about pit fighting,
and it says that there's a certain point in time where it was when Hasbro took over WotC, where they put a new person in place, they let go of a bunch of employees, and they started to shift the focus away from this mage punk aesthetic and an idea, and started to shift their focus into what was called the Invisibles, which were people who played Magic but not at a pro, semi-pro, what some people would call casual. They played Magic casually, and they started to shift their focus to these. They started to shift the focus from focusing on pro players into focusing on Magic characters like Planeswalkers. And through this change and through these evolutions that they've been going through in the past few years, the shift has gone away from pro play into casuals, and now the pro players are starting to fade into the Invisibles bracket. And I thought it was a very enlightened sort of look and a smart look at how a business evolves and changes when new leadership takes over or when they need to become more profitable.
Yeah, so I should point out that the reason it's titled An Open Letter to Jerry Thompson and Cedric Phillips, this is a response to, Jerry chose to sit out of Worlds in protest of some of these things that need to be changed. And there was a long episode of the Cedric Phillips podcast where they broke down and discussed these things. And so this is what this was written in response to. And yeah, like Morgan said, it's a pretty good summary of this. I think it's really interesting. Morgan used that term, the Invisibles, and I don't listen to Drive to Work. As I've said before, I love Mark Rosewater, but I can't listen to the man talk for large periods of time. I'm sure there's some of you who feel that way about me, and every time I talk and Morgan doesn't, it hurts you, and I apologize for that. But that term came from WotC itself.
Yeah.
Which, like, the guy even mentions how crazy that is, that they had a name for the people they couldn't track. And of course, we know that has shifted gears because we had that statistic from Mark Rosewater about what numbers they feel of like women play the game, and people were like, "Oh, you're just making that up," but it's like, no, they've shifted how they measure these things. And I think when you look at things like the surveys that come out after sets now, like I've taken a couple of them. Pro players aren't doing those surveys. It's it's the Invisibles taking those surveys,
right?
And those surveys are not about, like, if you take one of those surveys that come out after a major set release, they don't ask you questions about tournament play. They ask you questions about the art, how does it make you feel?
Yeah.
Which is something the guy focuses on here. This
Very much
concept
so.
of emotional attachment and aesthetics.
And he describes that as a way that Hasbro, the Hasbro leadership has sort of helped ingrain into the people that are sort of leading Magic design, instead of thinking about how complicated or what have you we can make these cards. They talk about emotional attachment and what does this make you feel emotionally, because that's what they do with all their brands. That's what they do with Transformers and My Little Pony and things like that. They want to make you emotionally attached to Magic in multiple ways, so they can sell you things, and that's really where it breaks down. And that's capitalism.
If you're cynical about that, I mean, like, it doesn't exist unless they make money. So like, you gotta throw them a bone every now and then. I think it's interesting you mentioned like Transformers, because like when I got to sit down and an interview, we talked about it at Gen Con. I got to interview the man who had designed most of the Transformers game, and he talked about how like the Transformers cards, the oversized cards that flip, like he wanted you to like, this is my character and I'm going to transform it, convert it, like literally flip it over, right? And like I think like when there's a feeling attached to that, like seeing it literally go from car to bot and bot to card, because they want you to have like a kinetic emotional connection when you touch the card. And I think like if you think that's crazy, think about what you like to do in Cube and why Cube appeals to you, because you like opening those certain cards and building around them. I know that's how it works for me. Throw me a Whirler Rogue in every single pack and see what I can do. But I think I don't know who A.D. Jamison is. If I should, I apologize. I really do not. But this is one of the best written pieces I have like read in a long time about this, and I felt like a lot of things clicked for me reading this article. Like, oh wow, this actually all makes sense. Now, of course, some of what he's saying is conjecture. He uses as much citation as he possibly can, but it's not like he's an employee behind the scenes. But I do want to say that like he had a quote here. So Matt Cavada was the creative lead of Magic in 2005, and this goes back to Morgan's point talking about the Mage Punk. This is what he said Magic was in 2005, and I want you to think about what Magic looks like now from a creative element. Magic is a head-to-head battle of wits in which two spellcasting warriors fight to the death with magic and armies of badass creatures. Every card illustration should work in that context. Active, aggressive, cool, wicked, edgy. The word Magepunk works for us. Remember, your audience is boys 14 and up. I want you to understand that had Hasbro not changed direction, if that's literally what your creative lead says, Magic's dead. Yeah. And it did almost die.
Yep.
So I think that's a really I had never heard that quote, but one of the things it mentions here, there's a card it puts there's Tears of Rage, and I remember distinctly like that's art from Darksteel. Mirrodin block I remember now. Mirrodin block was the last full block I played before I quit the first time, and as much as I liked Mirrodin block, there was tons of issues with competitive play. Kamigawa was an awful block. But I remember the art style in Mirrodin like annoying me consistently, especially these are Volshocks, the red Volshock creatures. And now I hear, and I never heard that word Magepunk. Like I wasn't like paying attention to that part of the game at that point very much. Like whatever the creative lead was saying. Oh my gosh! though, like thinking of all the Volshocks, like go look at Volshock cards. That's awful. Their aesthetic is terrible.
Yeah, as much as I love Koth, he's a
Volshock.
He's a Volshock.
But like they have like
he doesn't like shirts.
They have like metal mohawks.
Yeah.
It's like somebody went into the future and found all of the things the Mad Max reboot scrapped and said, we're taking these back to the past. So I think that I would strongly suggest reading this. I will actually tweet out the link to this before the show goes up, so you can come back and take a look. But like if you've wondered where that's gone, and I will say one more thing, he makes a good point too about how they went all in on pro players for so long, and they had all the cards from everything else, and pro players were almost all like Anglican men. You know what I mean? Whether they be Western European or North American, almost all just like white people. You did for a little while have like there was an Eastern contingent, but it was all men. I don't even think there's a pro card for a woman. I would have to go back and look. I don't think there is. And it talked about how like they went all in on these people and said it was for boys. And if you think again, you can be one of those people who doesn't think representation matters. But if you look at when they make that shift, and this article talks about when they make the shift away from that coincides with the biggest boon in Magic's growth. That huge exponential growth we had all the way through Zendikar. is with that switch when they start appealing to different players and appealing to those invisibles. And I think you have to look at that, because if you look at our pro contingent now, it hasn't changed. The women who have like had pro success, they now work for Wizards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just do.
Yeah.
So I think it's important when you think about that, why would WotC continue to support a face of their game that no longer is in line with their brand model, and I mean like their demographic model? It just isn't.
I think one of the strongest points that he makes is the idea of play the game, see the world is no longer true, is no longer a thing, and they subtly did this when they changed what our Pro Tours are named after. It's not Pro Tour Tokyo, it's not Pro Tour Honolulu or what have you. It's Pro Tour Guilds of Ravnica. And I think like that is a very elegant illustration of how they've shifted away from that style, because it's not supportable anymore. This isn't something that, they are looking to really enforce and keep up with. I think the one failing that I do have sort of a gripe with this article is some of the suggestions that are made to assist the pros in this. And he suggests to treat the situation like the Invisibles did in their time, and to create your own tournament series that supports your pros. And it's just like, that's not easy. Like Star City Games, can't make a tournament that make a tournament series that really supports the lifestyle for as many people as it would need to. When you take a look at the situation for the people who are casual players that weren't getting prime support from Wizards of the Coast, it was still easy to play the game. It's still free to have a friend group that you get together and make Commander and play it. Develop that like that. I'm not saying it didn't take time, but it still didn't cause you to have to figure out a way to get millions and millions of dollars pumped into a tournament series. So I don't know. That doesn't seem like a feasible solution to me, unfortunately. And I don't know if they're reading this article and agreeing with a lot of what's being said. I don't know what the solution is for the pro players to have this sustainable lifestyle. And I think that is a pretty big conundrum, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I think that's true too. I think one thing to think about with that, and something that I've considered based off of this, and I think like as I say this, like there's some things you could take away even from like what Morgan and I do on a semi-weekly basis.
3 weeks in a row, man. Come on.
He mentions how like pro players think that like LSV, for example, is like that's them, right? But LSV's, as he suggests, is quite literally the opposite. Like it is the exception to the rule. Like of someone who is well liked in both the casual and pro communities. Pro success is ephemeral. It is fleeting. It doesn't last very long. I've been to the Pro Tour and I have 4 open top 8s and a win, and I gotta tell you, no one knows who I am, right? Like I real talk here. I am sponsored by Comic Town, which is a great store in Columbus, Ohio, and you should go and play there. Ding. And I sat down across from a person at F&M who I have definitely played against before, and they asked me, "Do you play here often?" Right? And like part of me I was like, I feel like I'm a gargoyle here, but like yeah, I play here. And that's why I said, like, yeah, this is my home store. And that's what I said, right? But like in my mind, like that's a little like mind breaking to me a little bit. It's like, but we've talked before. I'm here a fair amount. They give me some sort of like value to like do things that I do. But I think like that's just the nature of people who don't care about the competitive scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if they're not following that kind of, and I'm not saying that I'm part of the competitive scene, but I mean like I have had success and it doesn't matter. It doesn't make me notable. I think there's a lot of pros. Name 5 platinum pros right now. We do a competitive podcast. Name them right now.
Oh, see, I could name like Hall of Famers, but platinum pros. Oof.
And they're the ones who are supposed to be the year-to-year harbingers of the game.
Yeah.
Now, WotC, that's on WotC too, because they don't do that. But as this person suggests, even if they did, we might not know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like that's something to consider, is that like the concept of like success and notability may not. I think that Jerry has a lot of valid points, and I do think that the pro players that they do, Wizards is still incentivizing them to come and do these things. They should be compensated in a fair fashion. But at the same time, I think there's enough argument to just the nature of people and what the nature of success has been in this game that tells you maybe that's not true. You know what I mean? Like, I have had people, I have literally had, especially even after I had like did well locally, right? Definitely have had people recognize me for my voice. Like, hey, are you on that podcast I listened to? And again, I feel like I'm like patting myself on the back. This does not happen often. Don't worry about it. I have no illusions, okay, or delusions, I should say. But more than that, than like, hey, you like were in this tournament. I've seen you on coverage. I think my wife and my mom are the ones who are like, "Ooh, I saw you on the TV." You know what I mean? Like that's not. So I think that's kind of interesting when you put it in that context. And I know that Morgan and I literally talk about competitive, but we will talk about individual players that we know who are larger, and we will shout out local friends because, well, that's what we can do. But we talk about decks more than anything else. We talk about cards. We talk about storylines that WotC creates. And I think the very nature of what we talk about supports what this person is writing about.
Yeah. And you asked me if I could name 5 Platinum Pros. Definitely can't, but I can name a heck of a lot of Planeswalkers. So
That sure can.
So that's kind of really shows you. Maybe that's anecdotal, but maybe shows you where we're at with the game.
I mean, I guarantee there's a BuzzFeed article that will tell you which Planeswalker you are.
Oh, 100%.
Probably not one that tells you which Hall of Famer you are.
Definitely not. So, but
ooh, I hope it's Kibler.
but definitely a good read for sure. So. Before we shift into competitive, I do want to give a good shout out to our friends there at Comic Town.
Ding ding.
They are going to actually be holding an IQ on the 29th of December. So if you're going to be in town locally for the holidays or what have you, definitely check that out. And you can find out more information about that tournament by going to Comic Town Gaming Center on Facebook.
I do want to plug a couple more things for them.
Sure.
One, they do another show that in their circle is wildly popular, which is Black and White and Red all over. If you like comics, you should go and take a look at that.
Yes.
Especially with some cool things happening. Also, like the new Captain Marvel trailer, things like that. Mm-hmm. But two, they also help sponsor a show, and I will try to look at the name of it real quick, but a show that helps raise money for some various charities before the holiday season. And they
is it the huge holiday
show?
Yeah,
the huge holiday show.
Yes.
And they do that. They've done it the last couple years,
yep.
And it's what I will say, if you know Comic Town at all and you've ever interacted with Ryan, who owns the store, if you've come in for an IQ or anything else, that guy really puts it out there for a lot of charitable causes. Like, he busts his butt to raise some money for a lot of good causes. So if you are interested in those, and the huge event is it's a comedy show. It's a fun.
It's like a comedy and music and a little bit of everything that you can put on a stage.
It's a little potpourri thing, but it's pretty nifty. And if you're interested in that, go and check out that one. I would check out just Comic Town. Yes. Not Comic Town Gaming Center.
Yeah, worldofcomictown.com is their URL. And having known about the huge show, it's definitely something that has done a lot of good work here locally in Columbus, Ohio. So definitely, if you are local or not, definitely see if there's a way that you can contribute to it in some facet. I actually work with the organizer at my real life job, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a real cool guy. So
you know Huge?
I certainly do. I certainly do. But yeah, all right. Let's talk about some competitive here. First and foremost, we're gonna talk a little legacy. We had GP Shizuoka. It was a total of almost 1,500, so 1,429 players, which doesn't really shock me as far as numbers go. The Japanese player base, anytime they get a GP anywhere in Japan, really drives people to go there. I know they have just such a huge and enthusiastic player base there in Japan. It was won by Eldrazi Stompy.
Eldrazi Pompeii.
Eldrazi Stompy, piloted by Teruya Kakume, defeating Hiroyuki Kaga in the finals, piloting Mono Red Prison. So that sounds like a Legacy Finals that I would enjoy to some degree.
Can we? Eldrazi Stompy won. We know what Eldrazi Stompy is as a deck if you know Legacy. I put the link on there for top stories though. I want to talk about this Red Prison deck for a second.
Yeah.
Day 2 metagame breakdown for this Legacy GP had 7. This was I think it was like the top 100 tables or whatever like that. They did it full, but it was like 17 copies of Grixis Delver, then 10 copies of Mono Red Prison.
Yeah, it's It's I mean, like, so Jordan definitely played against it in the the team open that we played in.
Yep.
And he got stomped by it. But because he like mulliganed really low, or
That's
no, like
possible.
his opponent mulliganed really low to find the Leyland
To
Void.
find a
That's
Leyland
what,
Void, yeah.
that's what it was. But I feel like this deck is fairly popular.
Well, it is, and its popularity has been sparked by Guilds of Ravnica, because they got a couple of one in particular major pickup, because this was a deck that always wanted to like resolve some prison elements and then stick one major threat. That threat is normally either Chandra, Torch of Defiance, or Goblin Rabblemaster. Well, guess what? Now we got two of them.
we could play the whole 8 set.
Yeah, all of these lists are running now 4 Goblin Rabblemasters and 4 Legion Warboss, which I think is
Yes, please.
I mean, what else do you want to do? Stick a Blood Moon and play a Warboss. That sounds great to me. So, but a bunch of them are also playing Goblin Crater Makers in some numbers, which I think is
Yeah.
pretty interesting. When you think about the finals, now granted, the second place list by Hiroyuki Kaga does not have that aforementioned Goblin, but he played against Eldrazi Stompy. Crater Maker says pay 1, destroy target.
Colorless.
Permanent.
Yeah.
Oh, like,
That's all of them.
so that's spicy. Oh, and hey, does
Non-land permanent, to be specific.
it is like, yeah, you can't do, oh my god, it's not just like destroy land, that would be insane. But thinking of just like all the things you can destroy against those decks is pretty impressive. But I think the other thing that it does too, which is kind of random, but like you have things like Hazard the Fervent here, we said Goblin Rabblemaster, that kind of stuff. You can use by having Crater Maker in your list. You also have the ability to surprise pop your own Ensnaring Bridge.
Yeah.
Or just like, well, at least they can't attack me, and you're like, oh, bridge is up.
Bridges up. Yeah, I really, if I had $1 billion, I'd probably get Mono Red Prison in Legacy. It just looks like a ton of fun.
The sad thing
It
is,
has a lot of favorites.
the sad thing is the deck itself, like, really isn't that expensive, especially if you have some of these cards for Modern, with one exception, and that exception is City of Traders. And that
City
card,
traded nearly $1,000 for a playset.
yeah, that card's
wow.
on the reserve list, and in these kind of decks, there's really nothing you can replace it with. It's already playing 4 copies of Ancient Tomb as well.
Yeah.
It needs all these 2 mana enablers. So that is the big. Because if you look at the rest of this, you probably if you played some of these decks in Modern, you probably already have the Blood Moons. You might already have the Chalices. Chrome Mox is a little expensive. Heck, you might have the Chandras from Standard still. The creatures are not expensive. Like, this is not that bad of a deck if you subtract $1,000 from City of Traders. So if you know a friend who has City of Traders, you two sync up, make the decks kiss, and
Yeah, you'll be fine. Like, you take away City of Traders, and this deck's like $700 something.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think that also even cards like a Braid in the sideboard, you have so many recent cards in this deck that has sort of made it. Legacy sometimes is slow to adapt, but when you have like all these new cards rebreathing life into an older archetype, because Mono Red Prison's been around for a long time, but it's pretty. I don't know. I think it's pretty cool, and I think sometimes when you look at Japanese GPs and just you don't always have the same metagame, but I think in this case you might be seeing the harbinger of something new in the format, because Legion Warboss is real, and again 10 copies of Mono Red Prison at the top tables in day 2 is crazy to me. So any decks you want to talk about here?
No, I was looking through, and I'm no expert on Legacy, so I didn't see anything.
You didn't like the 10th place list?
What, blue
Red Wizards?
No, I mean that. Sure,
it's playing Soulscar Mage and Stormchaser Mage, in addition to Monastery Swiftspear, and oh my god, it's playing 3 copies of Risk Factor.
Wow.
I don't get it. It only has 16 lands in this deck. How are you casting Risk Factor, man? I don't know when you're doing it, because I guess you have some basics, so maybe you're not getting Wasteland into Oblivion, but this deck's a little for me, but good job. Proud of you, Hongta Chi. I said your name right. I really apologize if I didn't. So,
but no, like I said, don't really know that much about this whole thing they call Legacy.
the thing they call Legacy.
So, but I'm sure they were probably pretty excited to have a Legacy GP. I know
it had more players than the standard one, so
yeah, and that to me, again, that's not surprising for it being in Japan.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the other GP that happened in Shizuoka. Standard. It had a total of 1,200 players. Again, I don't know if that's a rounded number or like I don't know how they get like right on the money. I guess if you hit cap,
Yeah,
you're right on the money.
I don't know. Like numbers have like the number of players will stop somewhere. It's just as likely it stops at a specific like 1,200 as opposed
I
to any
guess
other number.
it just always feels weird.
It just feels like it's important, even though it's not.
It was won by Golgari Midrange, piloted by Atsushi Nakashima, defeating Celestia Tokens, piloted by Takuya Natsume. Yeah.
We're doing our best here.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, there wasn't. Was there video coverage for this?
Probably a Nico,
Right, gotcha.
but not actual because this took place when people were like sleeping here in the United States. So
without hearing it, I would need to guess.
But more than likely there was coverage on for. I think there was because people are tweeting about how awesome like Japanese coverage is because they have like graphics that come up when people win and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, I do believe there was. Nothing really. When we take a look at the top 16 here, it is definitely as far as like broad archetypes, stuff that we've seen. I do want to talk about the Jeskai control list that piloted itself to a third place finish.
The deck piloted itself to a third place finish.
There's that no player. No,
okay, Japanese GPs are crazy.
It was piloted by Toshihiro Saida. And I built this list on Magic Arena. I've been playing a little bit with it because I don't know. Sometimes I like playing control decks. And it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoy. He has 3 Legion War bosses in the sideboard, and I've seen like other Jeskai control lists previously. You do things like have History Banali and stuff like that. But I always enjoy that sort of common tech that you see of just a threat that is so good when you stick it and your opponent doesn't have an answer for it in like the control mirrors. And people used to do that with Rabble Master, but now you get to do it with Legion War boss, and it's great. It's good.
I think also when you have a number of the Jeskai decks sitting somewhere between like regular Jeskai control and Adrian Sullivan's list from Milwaukee, like here he has 2 copies of Niv Mizzet, but some of the decks were between 2 and 4 Niv Mizzets. A lot of the sideboard plans involve Spell Pierce and Dive Down. If they're bringing stuff to protect their Niv Mizzet, and then you're like, here's Legion War Boss,
turn 3 Legion War Boss.
You're like half my cards don't interact with anything. So yeah, I agree. That plan is really good.
And the Golgari mid-range list, we kind of see people. There's like one Deathcourt Scavenger in here, but I like the Detection Tower in the lands list.
Yeah, that's becoming a lot more common.
Yes.
These matches are coming down to, and the control lists are also playing one of these fairly often. So many of these games are coming down to. Heck, I mean, going back to Milwaukee here too, we really started seeing I'm just going to play 4 Carnage Tyrants in my 75. You know what I mean? He's got 3. In the the second place list. Nakashima's list has 3 in the 75. You've got to be able to interact with it besides just triple blocking and crossing your fingers.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense to see this. And I think like when you look at. I know some not all the lists here, but some of the lists have even like when you're running cards like maybe like Adventurers Impulse and things like that, and of course all the Explore cards, you really do have a chance to see a singleton land more often than not. So I think that's definitely good tech. I know a lot of people, and we'll talk about this with the Classic too, but a couple of people were saying that Selesnya Tokens was a good pick for the weekend, and we do see it make a resurgence here. There's 1, 2, 3 copies of Selesnya Tokens in the top 16, which is more copies than there are of Izzet Drakes.
Yeah,
which gets
true.
shut out of the top 8.
Yeah, that's certainly a little bit rough, but I mean there's just so much. There's so much Golgari is still lingering around. It's still like just such a not oppressive, but it's such a huge like easy.
It just presents the deck. It's gonna go back and forth because it's very Jundy, but it just presents like I think no matter what deck you're looking at in the format, whether it be Selesnya Tokens or even Boros, like it presents the I think the most robust curve of any deck. Your 2 drops into your 3 drops into your 4 drops into your 5 drops are all powerhouses. You know what I mean? Especially if you're playing against anything aggressive, if your 2 drops Wild Growth Walker, then like if you don't deal with it, then your Jaylight Ranger is going to really spiral the game out of control.
Yeah, exactly.
But if it's Merfolk Branchwalker, there's a good chance you're either A, up a card, or B, you just have a 3/2 on 2 that you got some deck manipulation for. Usually followed by J-Light Ranger, right? Usually followed by probably Ravenous Chupacabra, right when you're trying to play a threat to stabilize.
Yeah.
And then your 5-drop is the Eldritch Reborn? I don't know. Vivian Reed? I don't know. Doom Whisperer? I don't know. All these things are terrifying.
Yeah.
So I think like when you're just talking about like raw power, like on a mid-range deck, because almost all the decks in the format right now are mid-range decks.
Yeah.
Even Adrian Sullivan's version of Jeskai Control is really a mid-range deck. So any of these control decks to have multiple main deck copies of like Niv Mizzet and an Expansion Explosion, like it's hard to call them pure control because like they're also trying to build to just a bigger payoff, and they're not interested in waiting until you are done. Right, most control decks will try to run you out of things and then turn the corner. These decks are kind of competing on the same axis, and if you're all doing that, then Golgari seems fine right now.
Yeah.
So I do want to mention Yuya Watanabe, who's in 16th place. He was undefeated day 1.
Wow.
And then just did not have a great day 2. Missed his winning in essentially. But he got something real spicy in his list. I want to mention it. So his list is running 4 Enigma Drake, 4 Crackling Drake, 2 Niv Mizzet. He has a Ral Izzet Viceroy in the main. He's running 3 copies of Dive Down. So like he is all in on this plan. He's playing 1 copy of Quasi Duplicate.
This has been a card that's kind of been gaining some attention due to Saffron Olive. He's really been pushing the Quasi Duplicate, and it's not surprising for it to bleed into the pro realm.
I mean, it's just the kind of card when you're playing things like 4 Charter courses. Interestingly, though he's playing Charter Course, he's not playing like Tormenting Voice at all. He's Discovery Dispersal as his other option. But I think when you have those there, it's really easy just to throw that Quasi Duplicate into the graveyard at some point and just forget about it. It's the same reason people have been playing things like Maximize Velocity. You can just like throw it in the yard, and it just sits there, and maybe it does something, and maybe it doesn't. Half the cards in your deck don't do anything because you put them in the graveyard.
Yeah,
but man, when you just get to make I'm going to make another Crackling Drake.
Yeah, I mean he's not running Tormenting Voice, but he's also not running any Phoenixes.
That's also true.
So
that's also true.
You just care less.
And this is sort of the new build of this. That is literally Izzet Drakes without Phoenix. The other Izzet Drakes deck that is in 12th place was Kazuhiri Noine. Does have Arclight Phoenix. So, but yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting way to go about building that. And Quasi Duplicate is a card that makes me really happy. So.
For sure.
Do you want to talk about Standard Classic real quick so we can just go like Legacy Standard and then Modern?
Heck yeah.
All right. Standard Classic had 122 people. This is in Baltimore. We're moving to SCG.
Correct. Star City Games Baltimore.
Get in the plane. We're going to Baltimore.
Whee! It's a long flight from Japan, though.
I really do not know why my plane sounds like you hit a home run in RBI baseball for the NES.
That's just how it sounds. This is what it is. Well, this classic has a little bit of a different story for Izzet Drakes here. Taking down the entire tournament, piloted by Andrew Virel. Taking down Golgari Midrange, piloted by Miles Houseman.
But we also have Izzet Drakes in 3rd, Izzet Drakes in 5th, and 16th. But I think, here's the crazy thing. If you look at Vorel's list, it's different from the other 2 we just talked about. So he does have Phoenix, but he's playing Goblin Electromancer. The other 2 were not. Mm-hmm. And he's doing the Mirari Conjecture that we've seen off and on a little bit. So, I think, there's still so much room, when we talk about these archetypes, yes, Standard has settled into archetypes, and to Wizards' credit, settled into archetypes that are pretty much based around the guilds. Awkwardly, Dimir still does not show up. Everyone's playing Surveil cards, but sorry, Dimir. Someday you'll be good enough to be a deck on your own. Maybe when the Scarab God comes back.
A good competitive. People still try it, but it's not as...
Sure, but I think when you have most of your standard decks based around the guilds, and your current standard set is Guilds of Ravnica, the things we talked about in the first half of the show, that's a big deal, right? Again, we don't associate with players. You can come to play standard and play your guild. And I think that's huge, because I don't know if you know this, players identify with their guilds. That's another BuzzFeed article.
Yeah. So which guild are you?
Oh my gosh.
It's important.
Did you know there's a quiz that was that Magic WotC's website, the mothership actually hosted, and I took it, and the first time said it was Rakdos, and do you know what I did? I lit my computer on fire, and then I got a new computer, and I did it again.
But by lighting your computer on fire, that seems very Rakdos.
I know what I did. I got Rakdos. I just stared at the Rakdos for a little while. I was like, no,
No, thank you.
no. I've definitely aligned with both Izzet and Azorius and Boros at different times. All of these, either blue or white aligned in some fashion, right? And like I've always had red. I like my mountains. I do, but man, dipping into swamps, dipping into like that party mode. I don't know. I feel
Maybe
like,
younger, Mike.
I feel like I'm that person who like. I don't know. I'm on Ravnica. I accidentally went to like one Rakdos party, and I'd been really like conservative. Like, no, I won't like this. And then I tried a little bit of debauchery, and then like the next time my family saw me, I was in full like face paint and everything. Where it's like we're going Rakdos and
whoop whoop, as it were.
whoop whoop. Shut up, mom. This is me now.
Jeez, it's kind of unfortunate that like that the insane clown posse like. Exists in the same the insane clown posse exists in like the same realm as like the Rakdos cult, because like in my mind they're always associated with each other. So if like you remember the Rakdos, you just like really like Fago. So
when we're talking about like how the Izzet have magnets and we don't know how they work.
Yeah.
I should stop right here though, because there was an article, I don't know if you saw this, about ICP. One of the singers for ICP.
I know he has a good heart.
Yeah, like his daughter like wanted to go to like a furry convention.
His daughter is a furry.
Is a furry, and like so he made an ICP themed furry like
for himself,
and they went like that's a good dad.
Yeah, he's just a good dad.
So
yeah, I watched the video. Like, man, I have to take it back. A lot of things that I definitely. You know what? Again, this is a moment where we're separating the art from the artist. The artist, good. The art, not so much for me.
Yeah, it's fair. It's for others.
Yes, for others.
So, and but I got
like the Rakdos cult.
Anyways, oh my gosh.
But to like, I'm excited that the standard looks like this. I'm excited for allegiances.
Yeah. So I
hope. Like, I keep thinking about it. I'm like, oh man, we're gonna get a new Domri raid. I'm very excited about it.
Who isn't excited about Domri Raid? Gosh.
We get, and like so there's been a bunch of, because there was an RPTQ and there was a bunch of art.
We're getting Kaya.
Kaya is apparently aligned with the Orzhov to some degree. Again, we know she ghost busts.
She makes her feel good. Now, again, I'm going to go back to this. If you listened to the first half of the show and you read that article and you thought we're crazy, listen to us now, because I'm a lot more excited about the Planeswalkers running these new guilds than I am about who might play those Planeswalkers.
True.
Oh man, if you don't remember who Kaya is, like I said, she
Ghost
is from
Assassin.
She's from Conspiracy 2, but I'm pumped. I just love it. Tace is gonna hire her to kill the Ghost Council. That has to be it, right?
I don't know why you hire Ghostbusters and thought to bust ghosts.
Because she has to become the guild leader, right? Isn't that how this is going to be set up?
Yeah.
So like she's going to kill the Ghost Council, and they're going to be like, well, who's going to lead the guild? And she's like, well, heavy is the head that wears the crown, but here it is.
So assumedly we're going to get 3 Planeswalkers in the next set. We're going to get Dovin Bond. We will get Domri Raid and Kaya, and those will be the other 3 leaders. The other 3 evil Nicobolus, influenced leaders to oppose the non Planeswalker led guilds. Which is very exciting. But yeah, new Domri Raid. I hope it doesn't suck. But I really do like playing a sort of mid-range green and green-red decks, and that's like sometimes it's Jund or sometimes it's Naya, but like the core is always green-red, and that's where I've found a lot of my enjoyment in playing Magic. So it's very exciting to get that final guild and kind of make that pie complete, as it were. Especially with a new Planeswalker that's going to be coming along with it. That's hopefully playable. That's hopefully good. You can't really. Sometimes you get misses, and that's okay. But with this coming in, you get the real opportunity to have like turn 1 Elf, turn 2 Legion War Boss, and that's very exciting.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I think that again, like the standard format has been really, really fun, and man, when it gets opened up with all of the Shocklands, and your mana bases can be whatever, and like, oh man, it's just going to get better. It's just going to get better.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's very exciting. It obviously harkens back to last time we were in Ravnica. We had a lot of awesome decks, and there's a lot of stuff that you can do, and I really hope that it, is a similar environment. I know the cards will be similar, but I really hope that the actual decks that we can build are also similar. So, that's all I got to say about Standard. let's go ahead and talk some moderns. And man, I tell you what, I'm glad that we had that discussion about modern.
Man, didn't we call it? It feels nice to just be like, now, Grant, when I say call it, like we were like parroting some of what we've already heard. So
Sure.
like, it's not like I was just like, no one's heard about this card called Arc-like Phoenix.
Yeah, plenty
But
of
if-
people got the news.
But if you hadn't heard about it, they were out spreading that word.
They certainly were. So the actual Baltimore Open was won by Team BCW's own Ross Merriam, defeating Jeffrey Carr in the finals. Both of them were playing different variations of Phoenix decks. Ross Merriam was playing Is It Phoenix, while Jeffrey Carr was playing the Mono Red Phoenix deck. Now, if you haven't seen Mono Red Phoenix, I have to tell you something. I think it's the cheapest deck in Modern right now, at $297 in paper. That, when you say $297, you might be like, in ticks? Like, no, paper. The bulk of the deck is literally Arclight Phoenix at $100 for the playset.
And Manamorphose.
And Manamorphose, unfortunately. But hey, no. Wild theory, Manamorphose wasn't in Ultimate Masters. Maybe it's in Allegiances.
No.
I know, it's not
They're
there.
not giving us that card with Arc-like Phoenix instead.
I know.
That's not happening. Why would you even tempt me like that? We've already talked about how Goblin Lore would fit in with a Madness-inspired Rakdos. I don't need you doing this to me and
just
keeping me
saying.
up at night,
I'm
okay?
just saying.
I get all sweaty when you talk about
What
cards
if?
like
But
this.
what if?
Nah, there's no way.
What if they release that, but then ban Arclight Phoenix?
That's like saying Blackleaf Cliffs wasn't Ultimate Masters, so like maybe.
Maybe they switch it up. They don't.
No.
But yeah. Like I said, I just felt that when talking about Modern, we just hadn't really highlighted those decks, and they show up and they win. I don't find it at all surprising, and that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I felt like this was going to be a good weekend for these kind of
I
strategies.
agree, and I feel like the format wasn't prepared. Like, did you look at the Day 2 metagame breakdown?
No.
So the Day 2 metagame breakdown was like this. There are 14 copies of Bant Spirits, which is another deck that was getting some hype.
Yeah.
As being a better choice than humans.
In the current meta,
In the current
for
meta.
sure.
13 copies of Mono Green Tron. 11 copies of Ironworks, 9 of humans, 9 Infect, 9 Hardened Scales, then 8 Is It Phoenix, and then I want to know how many copies, and then 3 copies of Runaway Red, and 1 copy of Mono Red Hollow, 1 copy of Mono Red Phoenix, because these are all Phoenix decks.
Yeah.
So the people who apparently didn't hear the word, because I got to tell you, I've been playing the Mono Red Phoenix deck now for 2 straight weeks. I've just been jamming. I switched over to Jerry T's list, which is almost verbatim the list that took second place, piloted by Jeffrey Carr. You don't lose to Tron.
Yeah.
You don't. They do not interact with you. You do not. Like, if you look at those deck lists, like on Magic Online, I've still been playing Alpine Moon because I don't want to pay the tickets for Eidolon. But like, if you look, I want to make sure I'm not crazy here. Jeffrey Carr has, he's literally playing the exact list that Jerry T suggested. They don't even have, like, the earlier lists had like Blood Moon and stuff. They don't even care anymore. Like, you just beat Tron. So like, for that many people to show up and like, they day two'd, so don't get me wrong, but like, you weren't prepared for what the metagame was bringing. If you look at the top 32 here, Ironworks does top 8. Bant Spirits takes 10th place. Mono Green Tron takes 13th place. And let me see here. There is 1 more copy of Tron and 2 more copies, 3. Okay, if you get down to 24, 29th, and 32nd, then you get back to your Bant Spirits, and 1 more copy of Ironworks. So there's 2 copies of Ironworks in the top 32, 3 copies of Bant Spirits in the top 32, and 2 or 3 copies of Tron in the top 32. And those decks had huge numbers in the Day 2 metagame. So they didn't finish, and they couldn't finish in the Phoenix meta. I do think that Spirits isn't the worst matchup against these decks, but man, Spirits has a really hard time with, like, especially against Is It Phoenix. Like, Spirits does not beat a resolved thing in the ice very often.
Yeah, I think that's the real card that is the power. Like, and honestly, it's the real card that can be the powerhouse in these decks. Because you just don't have the cards to like fix that problem.
No, you really
because
don't.
the archetypes that would, the fatal push archetypes just aren't as strong. Now we see Jund in 5th place.
Well, you say that, but look at some of the decks that did do well. Grixis Death Shadow had a resurgent, having a 4th and a 9th place finish.
Yeah.
Now, Grixis Death Shadow has a hard time with some of the burn the mono red version puts out, but I think it's strictly better. Like in the matchup, I would take Grixis Death Shadow over blue red Phoenix most of the time.
Yeah.
Because they have a way to mitigate the draw and they can deal with Thing in the Ice pretty easily. So
Right.
I think it's interesting to see how the meta on day 2 even shifted for what it was, and these decks that had huge numbers didn't finish. You know, Ironworks is a really resilient deck, but the speed at which both Mono Red Phoenix and Izzet Phoenix can close a deck or can close a game makes it really tough. You don't even have to have interaction.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like your interaction is your clock.
Yeah, you're just like Sonic. You just gotta go fast.
Gotta faster. Sonic X.
I just think like it's interesting to see that. I really feel like a lot of people don't know how to attack these decks effectively. Like it's not just something like Dredge where you can be like, well, I got to play Graveyard Hate. Like you can play Graveyard Hate, but it's not the whole story. You know what I mean? Like it may stop one thing, but it's not going to stop the other thing with a lot of these decks. It may stop Phoenixes, but you know the Mono Red deck can just burn you out, and Izzet can just like play. Thing in the Ice, or find other ways to truly combat what you're doing. I mean, you still have Crackling Drakes as well as another.
Yeah, that's the spiciest thing from Ross Miriam's version. Man, Crackling Drake is
because even if you exile the graveyard, guess what? Don't count. Doesn't matter. It just cares about cards in your graveyard or in exile.
Absolutely
it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think like, and I said this last week. Where people were, I think. They hopefully, and I say hopefully, I mean I've been playing this deck, but things will start to change. But I said how people have really been leaning on Graveyard Hate to beat these decks. I myself in the last week I've been playing against like black green lists that are playing up to 4 copies of main deck Nile Spellbomb, right? It doesn't do enough,
right?
And what I'll also say, like Ross Miriam had an article today about like how to use your cantrips, which I think if you are interested in playing this deck, you should really look at that. I'd love to add an addendum to his article on when to crack Tormod's Crypt / Nile Spellbomb, because people are bad at it, and you can't just be worried about getting Phoenixes because people have those cards in their deck. But they don't use it to stop like Bedlam Reveler. They don't use them in the right play patterns to try and lock those people out. I can't tell you how many times that my opponent's been so afraid of Arclight Phoenix they've let me just chain spells and then cast Bedlam Reveler, and then they'll like exile my graveyard in response to Bedlam Reveler, and it's like, but it's too late.
This bad boy's coming down.
I got a 3/4 and Ancestral coming on, man. Like what are you doing?
He's gonna come show you the business.
Now Rest in Peace is certainly a better answer, but like as you just said, like Rest in Peace doesn't stop you from flipping Thing in the Ice or even like hard casting Phoenixes. In the Mono Red version, like people like go all in on Graveyard Hate, and then you just literally lightning bolt them to death. You're playing a 12 bolt deck.
Yeah.
So 12 bolts is literally as many as the burn decks normally play.
Right.
Like Helix is a more expensive bolt, right? But like you're just substituting. Like if you're talking about 12 bolts, you're playing bolts and spikes. They have Rift Bolt. You're playing Fiery Temper. Like that's the difference. So I think. Yeah, I think like some people I do think are figuring it out. If you look in third place, now granted I know we lost, but Joe Blizzard, you're a cool guy.
Thank you. It's very wintry, to be perfectly honest.
You're playing blue-white control. I think there's some blue-white builds that can really stand to do here. Path to Exile is a much better removal spell against Arclight Phoenix than anything else is, because if you're fatal pushing or bolting or you're like dismembering Phoenixes, all things that make me smile. Like whenever that happens, it's like, cool. Thanks. But Path is pretty good there. You also get things like Terminus, which is also good against a lot of these creatures, and you also get access to things like Settle the Wreckage, which is also very good against the best draws that these decks have. So,
yeah.
Blue Light Control may be a little bit in a bad place. If things like Mono Green Tron are one of the best decks, like or at least most represented decks, Blue Light Control is precarious. But against the Phoenix decks, I like where Blue Light Control is at.
Yeah. Mono Red Phoenix is definitely not the cheapest deck in Modern by any stretch, because we have actually a deck that's cheaper here in the top 16, which is Mono White Martyr.
Oh, that's fair. That's totally fair. Storm's also probably a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, by like $10.
Yeah. Though honestly, because of those two decks is why Manamorphose is now almost $100 for playset. So man, I have my playset of Manamorphoses from back when I was messing around with Mono Red Devotion in Modern. I'm so glad I have them. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a playset of good cards to have.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Mono White Martyr though. You know who's been on Mono White Martyr?
Tom Ross, right?
Tom Ross. You're like, oh yeah, you mean like the boss, like your boss Naya and Infect and Mono White Martyr? But again, if you look at things like what these Phoenix decks are doing, well, there could be worse things than just gaining a bunch of life.
Yeah, gaining a bunch of life definitely is pretty good against them for sure. I think someone else wrote about Mono-Rite Martyr as well in a recent article on Star City. So it's definitely a deck that it is a metagame deck.
For sure.
It's not something you can just bring to any tournament and be like, yeah, I'll beat anything, because that's not what that deck's all about necessarily. But it's definitely something to consider. We also have another interesting deck here in 12th place, which is Colorless Eldrazi.
Oh, look at that.
Which is not something that you see a whole bunch, but it's definitely there, and an option. I don't know what to say about it. That's necessarily like it's exactly what you think it is. There isn't anything really truly like new. You get some Zofri and Voids, which is scrying for free is great. So I'm like, that's not bad. But and then you get Karn in the sideboard as well, which hey,
I think this deck is also pretty good against the Phoenix decks. I played a couple Eldrazi. I've played a couple of lists in the last few leagues I've played, which I don't know if that's just like fluky or if that's an uptick in the deck.
Yeah.
But the first game I played in a league last night. The first game against this opponent, they were like land. Now, granted, this is not this build, but this is the red build that I was playing against the first time. It was like land, Spirit Guide, Chalice for 1, go. I conceded the game.
Chalice of the Void is.
I was like, well, I'm not going to show you what I'm playing, but I have to concede the game right now. And not just like Chalice, but even like Reality, or not Reality Smasher, but Thought Knot Seer. Neither of these decks are equipped to kill a Thought Knot Seer, and again, things that exile a card from your hand as opposed to making you discard it or like just destroying a creature are at a premium. Thoughtseize I think is actively bad against the Phoenix decks because. Unless you're taking a thing in the ice from blue-red, like the cards are pretty much the same. There are multiple times I've been Thoughtseize and it's like, all right, well, I have 4 bolts and like 3 discard things. Like, what are you gonna do? But I think like exiling a card gets a little bit more tricky because then that you don't get that resource for later. So I think that these decks can have kind of blistering openings. And then Chalice of the Void is just a tough card to deal with. We have some number of braids and things like that, but if you get a Chalice stuck on one, it gets really hard to do what you need to do. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these decks maybe gain a little bit of popularity if the Phoenix decks remain popular. Because they're also pretty good against the Death Shadow decks. Mm-hmm. Just by the very nature of, again, Chalice being there and the fact that Death Shadow has a hard time dealing with Reality Smasher.
Yeah, maybe people look to play some Eldrazi Tron and see and give that deck a shot for a weekend and see how strong you can get with the chalices and what have you.
Yeah.
Obviously, like that chalice deck is a little bit slower. You're not going to have your turn 1 chalice for 1 necessarily, but it's definitely an option. And that's what you should really be looking for if you want to combat something. Think about things that really attack these sort of decks in multiple ways, in multiple angles. So I think that would be my best suggestion going forward if you are, heading into SCG Con, going into the Invitational or what have you. You can't just attack these decks at one angle. You definitely have to be able to shift your axis against them.
And I think you have to have a way to close the game. You know what I mean? I mentioned like Blue Eye Control being good, but the one thing Blue Eye Control has struggles with is having good finishers. But post board, then you get things like Baneslayer Angel is a good finisher against these decks. You have to have a way to close out the games. Things that I've seen that have done well against me, Infect is a tough matchup for myself. Like we have the hands where you have a couple bolts and like gut shots, that feels really good. But sometimes you just have like Lava Spikes and you need a turn or two to set up, and you don't get it. Like you don't get that turn to set up. I also think that even things like Storm, for example, can be a little bit tricky because while you can be a little bit faster than them, Mono Red, specifically Mono Red, does not offer a lot of disruption. You can play like Damping Sphere and stuff, but that hurts you. So Blue Red might have a little bit more to go with that. I know Eidolon of the Revel has been the go-to answer that I've enjoyed. But I think there's definitely ways to fight against the deck, and or you could just be a monster and do what local player Michael Coyle is always doing in 15th place playing Grixis Whir. And I know that they put him on coverage.
Did you watch any of that section?
Yeah, I did.
Oh man, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that disservice, Michael.
No. You got put on there because you were doing well, but like they let's just say that they were not happy that he was being the featured match.
No, he played against aforementioned Blizzard and got destroyed. Got very handily taken care of. Probably because it's not a great matchup for his deck.
like,
it didn't look like a good matchup.
Soft permissions is even good against
Right.
Coil. So
and they just limbasted him. I felt like, oh come on, Cedric was like played it all for the show, but just like could not determine how this deck won games.
I will say that is probably one of the biggest strengths to Coil's builds is like he always seems to have a new build of it, and I've said this before. I've had to play against him a number of times in local events, and I always feel lost. I always feel like I can like figure out it's like, oh nope, punted here, shouldn't have done that. Like I don't know what I'm doing. But I think like mastering a deck like that, like it's sort of the old school spirit of Modern, at this point where it's like that you get rewarded for doing this, and he's had a couple of really good finishes with that. But I think players like that also know. There's another local player who also plays. He's been playing Lantern for forever, and I like always I'm just like, so you're still a bad person, and he's like, yep. So it's like, okay, as long as you know your place in the metagame, which is being the villain, then that's fine.
Yeah.
So is it really any worse, that deck any worse to watch than somebody fiddling with themselves while playing Ironworks?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
It's not. It's not. So that was the actual Open. The Classic was also, we just had a Modern Classic. It was won by Aaron Sanford, playing Runaway Red, defeating Gruul Land Destruction. Not a deck capable of winning tournaments.
You know what's really funny is when I had to update our show notes, I tend to just update the same document over and over again, and I realized I didn't have to change anything because Gruul Land Destruction won the last Classic. So I was like, man, that's weird how it keeps doing that. I will say Gruul Land Destruction feels really bad against the runaway decks. Like sometimes you can catch them with like not very many lands, but otherwise like you playing like Munvoli Acid Moss against that deck is hilarious and sad. So
we also have Goryo's Vengeance showing up here in third place, which is not often seen or played deck.
Not in a meta where people are playing as many rest in pieces.
Yeah, no joke. Just a brave
can.
person, just getting people. Anything else here in
there's
the classic
copy of Elves, which is I think pretty spicy.
Yeah.
And there's a copy of Selesnya Hexproof, which I don't know. Is that what they normally call Bogles? Is Selesnya Hexproof?
I mean, when you are in, when you have Ravnica on the brain, this is probably what they're going to be calling things,
I gotta say, I think Bogles is a tough matchup also for
100%.
Yeah, like now granted, Thing in the Ice is really good. But against the mono red variants, if you look at the sideboard plan where they have Rest in Pieces, they have multiple Dromoka's commands, Path to Exiles, and then Worship. If they ever resolve Worship against you, you cannot win the game. Like a Bogle and a Worship that's it. That's the game, guys. We did it. We lose. So something to consider. Not that I would ever advocate playing this. Again, you know what part of the metagame you are when you're playing a deck like that.
You know who you are. You know what you're doing. But I agree with you. I think that it's still metagame dependent. But even when you look at the sideboard, you have against the Izzet version, you do have up to 4 Path to Exiles post board, which is kind of where you want to be, and maybe you can think of some other things that you can even like add to the sideboard to maybe give yourself a leg up. But I definitely can agree with Hexproof here.
One last thing I want to say about any of the decks, I'm going to go actually back to Runaway Red because I hadn't actually looked at Aaron Sanford's list, the one who won.
Yeah,
he's playing for Soulscar Mage as opposed to Monastery Swiftspear.
Interesting.
I am super surprised about that, and I wonder the reasoning for that. Obviously, the difference here, haste versus the -1/-1 counter theme. I wonder what you're worried about then. I would say, like in my mind, immediately you are certainly better against Infect at that point, just because like the counter sticking is important, but. Just based on how the deck operates, I feel like you'd be missing haste a lot. But obviously, you won this event, so it's kind of interesting. But that is a specifically interesting decision.
I agree for sure. I think like it just makes all of your. I think it just all your burn against things that are like humans and bant spirits and things like that. Probably like it just makes those feel a little bit better. I would have to imagine makes blocks unfavorable, so you get a trade or even just get to take out something easily. I don't know. I think it's definitely a choice for a specific reason,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I would love to know that reason. If you know the reason, please tweet it at us so we can figure it out.
Specifically, you, Aaron Sanford.
Yes.
But I do like he's one of the few runaway red lists that's playing Lightning Axe, and I think that's something that the Izzet decks have been playing that I think is something the mono red lists need to adopt in some number, just because, especially if you're going to start seeing things like Thought Knot Seer again. But Thing in the Ice in those matchups is a
Yeah.
card you got to be able to get rid of without
just being able to
expending
kill something big.
too many resources. So, but overall, I like the list. I will say I do not play copies of Risk Factor. I still can't get behind that card. It just feels so bad to me all the time. But I know some people are having some success with it. So
Yeah.
there you go.
All right. Well, that takes us to the end of our a lovely show. Do we have anything Wizards-wise that's happening over the weekend?
Yeah, we
No?
have 2 GPs.
Okay, so what are the two GPs?
We have Grand Prix Portland.
You probably have it in the show notes.
I do,
Well, I'll
which
let
is-
you read them anyway.
That's fine. Grand Prix Portland. Thanks. I appreciate that, Fred.
You're welcome.
It's Grand Prix Portland, which is modern, and then we have Grand Prix Liverpool, which is Team Unified Modern,
Oh,
which
that's
makes sense because there's a lot of good bands that come out of Liverpool. So,
that's true.
though they're normally 4-part, I don't know.
Well, 3 pieces are in right now.
Yeah, the drummer's not as important.
Who cares about Ringo?
And then of course the SCG Con, which is literally every format you could ever want to play.
Yeah, completely. There's Cube there, man. I mean, everything.
But you do have to go to Roanoke. So like,
Just don't.
Yeah.
It's bad.
I feel like we just dump on that city. And
Don't
I know
care.
it's a star city.
Couldn't
but,
care less. Tell you what, hate Roanoke.
If you're ever like, oh man, those guys are biased. We are.
100%.
Ohio forever.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Everything is cool in Ohio right now, literally. 'Cause
I know,
it's
very
freezing
cold.
outside.
It's absolutely upsetting.
But that starts on Friday though, so
It does. It
so
does.
you can watch some invitational coverage on
Yeah,
on
invitational
Friday.
coverage is always a good time. So
For sure.
They always have the rotating teams and you get to see a lot of good players. So it's a good weekend for Magic.
100%. So that takes care of us today for this show. If you want to reach out to us, you have multiple ways to do so. We have a Twitter account. It's Your End Step, and when you add us, it's at Your End Step. We also have an email address at yourendstep@gmail.com or Facebook. You can just do a quick search for at Your End Step on there. We pop right up. We also have to thank our lovely sponsor. It's Comic Town. You can check them out on Facebook, Comic Town Gaming Center on Facebook, or worldofcomictown.com. If you're listening to us via iTunes, feel free to leave us a rating or
Live us. Just live us.
Leave us a rating or a review. It definitely helps with our visibility. And if you're listening to us via MTG Cast, check out some of the other shows on there. I want to give a very special shout out to, of course, all of our patrons over on our Patreon. You can definitely join that lovable crew if you'd like.
It's a movement.
You can visit our Patreon at patreon.com/@yourendstep. That's going to be everything for us this week, and we'll have another one for you next week. How about that?
We'll talk about that cool announcement.
Yes, I'm very excited about that cool announcement, but we'll catch you next time, and you have a great one. Bye.